Normally, the lower the level of a tuner monster, the more synchro monsters that the monster will have access to. A level 1 tuner is going to be able to go into any level 2 to 12 synchro. And for a while, level 3 and 4 tuners were specifically coveted for their ability to access the best cards in the pool. However, high level tuners are usually a lot more limited in what they can do with their number of stars, which theoretically should cut them off from a lot of great potential options. Although, despite this inherent flaw, some of the game's best high level tuners have proven that they're not just great, but that they're bannably strong, which is why they're the topic of today's video. Counting down the best high-level tuners in the game, how they circumvent their biggest weaknesses, and how some turn it into a strength. And at number 10, we have Flower Cardian Willow with Calligrapher, a level 11 tuner that at first glance seems almost impossible to use for any kind of synchro summon, as its level is higher than the monsters it's trying to bring out. But only at first glance, because when you use Willow Calligrapher as a material for a synchro summon, you can treat every monster involved in that synchro summon that has a level as 2. Opening up the levels 4, 6, 8, 10, and 12 pull the synchro monsters, giving Cardians specifically another way of accessing their even-leveled boss monsters. Although, you do need to get Willow with Calligrapher on the field in the first place, and your main way of doing that is with Calligrapher's own summon condition, since the only way to summon it initially is by tributing a level 11 Cardian monster, except Calligrapher to special summon it. And the only level 11 Cardian monster is Flower Cardian Willow. But if you do manage to special summon to the field, you get to draw a card. Then, if you draw a Flower Cardian monster, you have to special summon it, but if you don't draw a Cardian, you have to send the card you drew to the graveyard. This effect is generally strong for Cardians, as it's shared by a few other monsters, as it's a great way to extend by putting an extra free body on board if you're drawn to a Cardian, or even if you happen to hit a Recardination or Super Koi Koi, so that you can take advantage of their incredible graveyard effects, which can sometimes help you push even further than if you had successfully drawn another Cardian. But Calligrapher is a specifically strong Cardian due to being one of the 2 main deck tuners within the archetype, making it one of the only ways the deck is capable of accessing its synchro boss monsters in combination with its level modification effect, which means that the body that you could end up summoning with Calligrapher's effect is virtually guaranteed to get some value as synchro material for Moonflower Viewing for extension, Board Fly to stop your opponent from using the graveyard as a resource, Light Shower for its burn and protection, and or potentially even a Light Flare for its back row negate. Now, even amongst Cardian's limited tuners, Calligrapher isn't the strongest. Peony with Butterfly might not have the ability to extend for plays like Calligrapher's effect, but it's a lot more accessible since it can tribute any Flower Cardian to summon itself, while Calligrapher needs to specifically tribute Flower Cardian Willow. Thankfully though, Flower Cardian Willow might just be one of the best Cardians the strategy has available to it, since it's stupendously easy to summon since you can bring it out from your hand for free, so long as you control any level 10 or lower Cardian. Its summon isn't once per turn, and you even get to draw a card with it that you're guaranteed to keep no matter what, so long as you shuffle back a Cardian from grave. And because the deck always wants to get Willow in rotation, summoning out Calligrapher actually isn't that difficult. And while it might not be as versatile as Peony, any way of getting to the deck's amazing synchro boss monsters is honestly a huge buff to the strategy. So while Calligrapher might not necessarily be the most busted card in the world, its existence helps to facilitate a pretty unique and fun strategy that would be impaired without it being around, solely because it just so happens to be a solid archetypal tuner that makes getting your best monsters out a lot easier. And at number 9, we have Ursarctic Megatanus, Megapolar, and Megatanus, the 3 level 8 tuners of Ursarctic, a deck designed to synchro summon in reverse. Each of these tuners essentially has the same way of summoning themselves as every other main deck Ursarctic, allowing you to tribute another level 7 or higher monster from your hand to bring them out at a quick effect speed, but only during the main phase. But each of the Ursartics also have their own unique effects on special summon. In the case of the level 7 non-tuners, they aid your deck by letting you add to your hand or special summon Ursartics, while the level 8 tuners all do things to disrupt your opponent if they're summoned while you control another Ursartic monster. Megabilus is a DD Crow, Megapolar is an MST, and Megatanus is a Book of Moon. And each of these effects are pretty solid aspects of the deck's tuners when they go off. They're great for trying to push into an established field or in an attempt to break it apart piece by piece, or when you try to stop your opponent from making a board in the first place, especially when paired with the likes of Ursarctic Slider or with the substitution effects of Big Dipper or Ursarctic Drytron, as a well-timed Book of Moon or DD Crow could end up being a game-winning play. But for Ursarctic, the best part about these cards is that they happen to be high-level tuners that pair perfectly with their non-tuners, which can be used together in order to special summon out their best synchro monsters. You see, Ursartics get to their synchro monsters in a really unique way. Instead of combining the level of their tuner and non-tuner, you instead summon out these synchro monsters by sending monsters from your field to the graveyard, whose difference in level is equal to the monster you're trying to summon. So even though they're level 8 tuners, you can use them in conjunction with your level 7 monsters to bring out a level 1 synchro monster in either Ursarctic Polari or Ursarctic Polar Star. And then you can use Polari's extension or any other way to bring another Ursarctic on the field to bring back a level 8 tuner so that you can summon out the deck's level 7 Synchro boss monster, either in Grand Chariot, which can clear a field and protect your Ursarctics from being targeted, or Sepultrion, which negates the effects of any face-up monster summoned from the extra deck that doesn't have a level, effectively cutting off an opponent from using the abilities of Xyz or Link monsters. And you're definitely going to want one of these level 8 tuners available if you summon Polar Star specifically, as you can make your Sepultrion even stronger, since by treating itself in a level 8 Ursarctic from your hand or field, you not only get to bring out your level 7 Synchro boss monster, that monster will also gain a secondary effect to prevent your opponent from being able to activate the effects of monsters summoned from the extra deck that have a level. So if you summon a Sepultrion, you've essentially just put a blanket ban on the effects of your opponent's entire extra deck. The Ursarctic monsters and their tuners might bleed a lot of advantage most of the time, but when they work, and are a great piece of both the Ursarctic engine and even their end board in the right circumstances. And if you can bring out a fully stacked Sepultrion, they're going to do more than prove their worth, since even the best decks in the game are going to struggle without being able to use their best extra deck enablers. And circling to number 8, we have Geomathmech Magma, a level 8 tuner that proves that at Yu-Gi-Oh! Even the most simple math doesn't always add up. Thankfully though, there's nothing too complicated about Magma itself, since it can be made generically with any tuner and a non-tuner monster, and has 2 pretty solid effects. If Magma destroys a monster by battle, you get to pop 2 cards your opponent controls. While it's destroyed by battle or a card effect in your possession, you get to add a Mathmech spell or trap card from your deck to your hand. These effects made Magma a substantially strong toolbox option for early Mathmech strategies that could threaten to clear away most of an opponent's board, while also being an excellent bridge into summoning Geomathmech Final Sigma, a bomb of a boss monster that not only was unaffected by everything but Mathmech cards, but was also a crazy OTK enabler. Currently though, in modern Mathmech strategies, both Magma and Sigma usually take a backseat to Prime Mathmech Albertian, one of the deck's best consistency tools, and Laplacian, a powerful endboard piece that can be summoned out with Super Factorial during your opponent's turn that can deal with an opponent's monster, back row, and even rip a card from their hand all at the same time, and gets even stronger when summoned with Mathmech Diameter, which makes it an Omni-negate for the turn. However, despite not really seeing too much play in Mathmech anymore, Magma has still managed to see some decent competitive success across the years, solely because it's a high-level tuner that's incredibly easy to access due to being a synchro monster with generic materials, which, when paired with another level 8 monster, allowed you to access some busted extra deck plays. So, in the spirit of Mathmech, let's do some simple math. We know that 4 plus 4 gets us to 8, and that 8 plus 4 gets us to 12. So what level would using 2 level 8 monsters get us? That's right, 8 plus 8 equals either 0 or 12, because you can use your high-level tuner and non-tuner to go into either Ultimaya Tzolk'in or Phantasm Lord Ultimate Bishbalkin. Now, Tzolk'in is without a doubt an amazing extra deck option that can give you access to some of Yu-Gi-Oh's most powerful synchro boss monsters, and has increased the strength of every high-level tuner by just existing. But Magma specifically was notorious for giving decks such an easy way of accessing Bishbalkin to reduce an opponent's life points to 0 before they got a chance to play. This is specifically easy to do in Scrap Dinosaur, which could get you a level 8 non-tuner through Double Evolution Pill, and Magma by synchroing off Scrap Raptor with a level 4 monster, so that you can get combined into Bishbalkin and summon a bunch of tokens in both players' fields, which combined with your other monsters would guarantee that Bishbalkin would reach over 8,000 attack. But you wouldn't be keeping Bishbalkin, because instead you'd use the effect of Geodator Transverser to give your opponent the 8,000 plus attack beatstick in exchange for one of the monsters you summon to their side of the field. After that, it's just a matter of trying to make number 33, Chronomaly Mako Mech, a rank 5 monster, and this might seem hard to do at first. But with Scrap Wyvern, you can summon out the level 5 Scrap Golem directly from your deck, which you can use to summon Scrap Raptor back out to then synchro summon any level 5 synchro monster by using Raptor in one of the Bishbalkin tokens, and then you can overlay your Scrap Golem with the synchro for Machu Mech and burn your opponent out of the game on the very first turn. Mathmech Magma isn't the only synchro monster that you can do this with, and we've seen the likes of Dragon Core Hexer and Livestream Dragon fulfill pretty much the same role, but Magma being so easily accessible and generic made it the perfect possible tutor for this niche within this FTK combo, now being so consistent that Bishbalkin ended up being banned in Master Duel. So while Magma only saw play in Mathmech a fraction of the time, the help it gave to this FTK was exponential. Diving into number 7, we have Deep Sea Prima Donna, a level 7 synchro tuner that has some great utility. Prima Donna can be made generically with any tuner and non-tuners, and if Donna itself is synchro material, your opponent won't be able to target the monster with effects, making your high-level boss synchro monsters even stronger if you use Prima Donna as a material. But the really interesting part of this card is its other effects, because while it's on the field, you can give your opponent one of their banished cards so that you can special summon or add to your hand any level 4 or lower water monster in your deck. And if it's ever sent to the graveyard, you can shuffle back a banished card in either player's banishment back into the deck. Now, Prima Donna's summon from the deck is actually close to being busted, as there are a ton of insanely powerful potential targets for you to choose from. And if it was just a little bit easier to use, it likely would have seen play in just about any strategy with a strong water playmaker that could even theoretically make a Synchro 7. From tier limits being able to bring out a Rhino Heart from your deck, to adventure strategies getting yet another way to find Water Enchantress. However, because Prima Donna needs to give your opponent one of their banished cards, it's just a little bit too difficult for most strategies to set up, while bringing Donna on the very first turn of the duel, which definitely hurts Prima Donna's potential. But even with this effect being somewhat awkward to use, there are some strategies that can still take advantage of it, with the most notorious being water pile strategies, which easily get a card in your opponent's banish pile with the effects of Deep Sea Minstrel to banish cards in their hand, or Guitar Gonards to banish from the deck, all while using Deep Sea Diva as their tuner to access Prima Donna, which can then summon anything from their deck. From the likes of Marine Cess monsters to set up a solid end board, all the way to Barrier Statue of the Torrent to completely lock an opponent out of the game. However, despite most strategies not really being able to use Prima Donna's first effect, its second effect actually has a lot of potential interesting strength in a few different strategies because it triggers whenever it's sent to the graveyard by any means. This gives Prima Donna similar generic utility to the graveyard effects of Cyframe Lord Omega, which helps you recur your spent graveyard resources, but Prima Donna instead interacts with the banish pile. So if you dump a card from the extra deck with the likes of Nadir Servant or Ultimate Slayer, you have an easy way of recycling important resources or engine pieces that have found their way into banishment via the likes of Pawn of Desire, Small World, or even through an opponent's runic engine. Or you can instead shovel back one of your opponent's banished cards and put back a really bricky draw. Or in Water Hand Loop strategies, you can use this effect to put back the card that was banished by Deep Sea Minstrel so that your opponent won't get it back near the end phase, putting them an extra card down before their turn starts. In general, both of Prima Donna's effects have a lot of interesting potential. Its second effect definitely isn't game-breaking, but helps to fill an important niche, while its first effect being an E-tally for any level 4 or lower water would be absurd if it wasn't for the hoops you have to jump through in order to use it. So while it might not be that broken of a card at the moment, there's definitely a solid chance that a card like Prima Donna sees success in the future. And chilling at number 6, we have Icejade Ran Aegirine, another level 7 tuner designed to support water strategies. And it does this by essentially just being a Sword Soul monster, because by discarding any Icejade card or any water monster, you get to special summon Ran Aegirine from your hand, and then you special summon a level 3 Icejade token. And just like the Sword Soul tokens, you're restricted to only being able to summon a specific kind of monster while it's in the monster card zone. But instead of being locked into synchro summoning, you're locked into only being able to summon water monsters from your extra deck. And of course, because Ran Aegirine is an Icejade card, it also has a bonus effect that works within its own archetype, as if it becomes equipped with something, then its name becomes Icejade Cenote Indian Cradle. But of course, the strongest part of Aegirine's effect is that it can special summon itself and a second water body to the field immediately at the cost of just a single discard. And because that discard can be any other water monster in the game, it makes Aegirine really easy to use a generic extender. In terms of synchro monsters that you can summon, there are only a couple of options since there are exactly 3 level 10 water synchros that Aegirine and her token can feasibly summon. But the synchro options you do have are all incredible in their own right. You have Changying, a difficult to summon beatstick capable of both clearing fields and ending games outright. The upcoming Lancia, Dragonic Ancestor of the Spirit Mountain, an absurd piece of Ice Bear support capable of summoning out their best floodgates from their deck, extra deck and graveyard twice per turn whenever your opponent special summons a monster. And of course, there's Icejade Gamir Aegirine, an excellent piece of interaction capable of banishing your opponent's cards in response to effects activating that will also protect every one of your on-field monsters from being destroyed or banished. And all of this is enabled by Grimir just being able to easily commit 2 water monsters to the field instantly. But the interesting thing about Aegirine is that while it might read like a Sword Soul card, it isn't one, and only locks you into summoning water monsters from the extra deck, not just water synchros. This opens up a bevy of interesting options for Ran Aegirine, since you can use it and the token you summon to immediately summon a water link monster. And there's a lot of great targets to bring out depending on the deck that you're playing. Abyss Keeper is great for any kind of fish-focused strategy, Area the Water Charmer can be used to link climb using water monsters in your opponent's grave, and Crystron Halki Fibrax, if it were ever unbanned, you'd have that as an option. But one of the most interesting ones has to be Marine Cess Coral Anemone, because you can revive any water monster with 1500 attack or lower from your graveyard, so you can use this effect to grab Aegirine from your graveyard for an instant link 3, since its attack is 1500. Or you could even special summon back the water monster that you discarded to summon Aegirine, allowing you to get a strong starter on field without needing to commit to your normal summon. Overall, Ran Aegirine's effect is simple but versatile. It opens up a number of different interesting options for water-focused strategies, and it'll only increase in strength the more high-level water synchros and link monsters that get added to the pool. And at number 5, we have Visa's Amritara, an upgraded version of Visa Starfrost who has gained mastery over his fear, sadness, anger, and joy during the event of the first cycle of the Visa's lore, which is why Visa's Amritara's name becomes Visa Starfrost while it's on the field. And also why you can make Amritara by using Visa Starfrost and one of the level 2 Vanadium tuners, because despite them both being tuners, Amritara doesn't need a non-tuner to be summoned. You just need any tuner and any light monster whose levels equals 8. Amritara showcases their newfound control over their emotions, because if he's synchro summoned, you can add any spell or trap card that mentions Visa Starfrost from your deck to your hand. And of course, like the original Visas, Amritara has an effect that allows you to destroy a monster you control, so that all of your synchro monsters gain 800 attack until the end of the turn. Now, because of its search effect, Amritara can theoretically be useful in any Visa's lore deck willing to make it, since Visa Starfrost is mentioned in nearly 5 archetypes worth of back row, giving it a crazy number of potential search targets. But the deck that can take advantage of Amritara the best is by far Vanadium, a strategy that plays back row from every corner of the Visa's lore, and can make Amritara easily with not just Visas, but by using their level 2 tuners with their level 4 starters to synchro off into Vanadium Trisuka, a level 6 synchro tuner that can bring back a level 2 tuner from the grave so that you can then synchro off into Amritara, and that immediately gives you access to whatever part of the Visa's lore that you might be missing. You can search for Pillarino to get access to Visas Icejade Ran as a level 4 extender, or Scareclaw Arrival to revive your Visas and Rykart from the grave, and of course you could use Amritara to grab any spell or trap card in the Vanadium archetype, from extenders like Calarium and Obsession to negates and interactions like Vanadium Reframing. However, it's just Amritara's search that's strong Vanadium, as its bonus effects surprisingly do a lot. Popping a monster you control from an attack might seem like a bad trade at first, but this effect gives you an easy way of destroying your on-field Vanadium tuners, triggering their effects to summon from deck, as well as the effect of Peaceful Planet Calarium to summon the destroyed tuner, effectively allowing you to easily convert one body into 2. Meanwhile, Amritara being treated as Visa Starfrost on the field might seem like it's only relevant for lore reasons, but it actually does a lot to help the deck, because instead of trying to convert Amritara into a high-level synchro monster, because it's treated as Visas, you can instead turn it to either Vicious Astrolaud, if you haven't gotten the original Visas in rotation yet, or you can link it off for Scareclaw Lightheart, letting you search for Rycophobia to grab either Rykart or Starfrost while having a Dark Beast Warrior Scareclaw on field, making it easy for you to summon whatever you search, making it so that a summoned Amritara lets you search for Visa's lore cards twice, once when it's summoned and a second time when it's linked off for a Lightheart. In general, Amritara is such a neat addition to the Visa's lore, and it really feels like a Visas that has learned from his journey, as the card encourages you to not just interweave the archetype, but to use it for the different kinds of summoning methods that Visas learned along the way, since you can use it for Link, Fusion, Synchro, or even XC summons. And attacking into number 4, we have Sangenpai Bident Dragon, one of the most recent high-level tuners on this list, and one of the key boss monsters of Tenpai. You can only make Bident Dragon with a Dragon tuner and a non-tuner, and it also locks you into only being able to special summon dragons for the rest of the turn after you use its first effect. But that's worth it given that this effect is pretty important, since it allows you to target a fire dragon monster in your graveyard and special summon it whenever it's synchro summoned. And its second effect is perfect from the archetype it comes from too, because on a turn where 3 or more attacks have been declared by either player, you can summon Bident Dragon from your graveyard at quick effect speed, and then pop a spell or trap card on the field, but this effect can only ever be used once per duel. As a strategy, Tenpai does everything it can to leverage their battle phase to reduce an opponent's life points to 0 as quickly as possible by blinding second into an attempt to immediately OTK, and Bident Dragon is an amazing tool for that purpose. Theoretically, you can use your Tenpai Dragons to make just about any level 7 synchro monster you could want, but Bident Dragon does a lot to help Tenpai bridge its battle phase combos, as a big part of that is the damage output that Bident enables. You see, if you manage to get each of your 3 main deck Tenpais on board, you've already managed to get 4,800 life points worth of damage. But you can take advantage of your Tenpai quick effects to synchro summon a level 7 from your level 4 tuner and level 3 non-tuners. And while there are a lot of great potential options, Bident Dragon is by far one of your best targets, because not only is it an extra 2,600 points of damage, but you get to bring back a Tenpai from the graveyard. And because it's technically a new monster, it can attack again, doing over 8,000 damage on an open board. But of course, no one is ending on just an empty field. Thankfully though, Bident Dragon enables even more damage specifically because it's a high level tuner, which allows you to take advantage of the quick effects of your level 3 non-tuners to go into either Sangenpai Transcendent Dragon or an extra 3000 points of damage that will also lock your opponent out of the battle phase using effects, or into Trident Dragon to do even more damage with multiple attacks. And this is great on its own, but it gets even better when you realize that using Bident Dragon as a synchro material puts it into the graveyard. And because you've likely already attacked more than 3 times, you can bring it back out from the grave and pop a spell or trap card your opponent controls, and then swing for another 2600 points of damage. However, you don't have to use Bident Dragon to pop your opponent's cards, as it's always a way to destroy your own Sangen summoning, which will then double the attack damage of a synchro monster you control, which when paired with Trident Dragon being able to attack multiple times, allows for the deck to do an amount of damage so absurd that it can even OTK when damage is halved by Pot of Prosperity. And if that somehow still isn't enough, you can get even more damage by using whatever main deck Tenpai you have left to synchro summon using Bident again to get another synchro on field to attack with. Bident Dragon is just an integral part to the strategy that does so much to enable Tenpai's blind going second game plan, that without it, this winning hand would look a lot less like Tenpai and more like Noten. And swimming into number 3, we have Mare Mare, a level 7 tuner that can swarm the field with a ton of free bodies for virtually no cost. Because while it's on the field, you can reduce Mare Mare's level by 1 to special summon a level 1 mini Mare Mare token, and you can actually use this effect 3 times per turn for a total of 3 tokens. The only real downside of Mare Mare is that it can only be special summoned by the effect of a worm monster. So, if you can commit a Mare Mare to the field in some way, you gain an incredibly powerful playmaker. You can use these tokens as the non-tuners necessary to allow for Mare Mare to be able to adapt into any level 5, 6, or 7 synchro monster, depending on its level. But the real strength of this card is that you're not restricted in what you can use these tokens for, allowing them to easily be converted into free link fodder. And because of its thrice per turn effect, 1 Mare Mare is equivalent to a Link's 4 worth of material by itself, which gives you an absurd amount of flexibility on what you can summon with it, especially if you play the likes of Relinquished Anima, Link Spider, or IP Masquerena to easily convert these tokens into effect monsters with different names, allowing you to easily bring out the likes of Appaloosa, Borosaur Dragon, or even a Vertian Anaconda alongside an Artifact Dagda to scythe-lock your opponent in any format where they're both legal together. The only real downside to Mare Mare is that you need to have a realistic way of summoning it, since its conditions limits its potential use. Fortunately, however, there is at least one amazing worm monster that makes Mare Mare much easier to use. Yazi, Evil of the Yang Zing. Because if Yazi is destroyed by battle or a card effect, you get to special summon out any worm monster from your deck, and Mare Mare just so happens to be a worm. The only hurdle to jump through is needing to destroy Yazi in some way. There are a couple of easy ways of doing this. Adventure Synchro decks, for example, would summon out Yazi alongside the now banned Baron de Fleur, and use its effect to pop your own Yazi to get access to Mare Mare from your deck. But if your opponent has any card on their side of the field, you can also use Yazi's own effect to pop itself and your opponent's card so that you can trigger its summon from the deck, and then get access to everyone's favorite token-generating seahorse to start link climbing after wiping an opponent's potential threat. As a whole, Mare Mare is an individually powerful card that can represent a ton of free link materials. But it's bolstered even further both by the extra deck monsters that are available to summon with its tokens, and its ease of access through a card like Yazi. And firing off to number 2 spot is Shooting Riser Dragon, a level 7 synchro monster that can essentially act as a Foolish Burial. Because when it's synchro summoned, you get to send any level 6 or lower monster from your deck to the graveyard. Then you can reduce the level of Shooting Riser by the level of monster you set, but if you do this, you won't be able to activate the effects of the monster you sent, or monsters of the same name as that monster for the rest of the turn. Shooting Riser even has a bonus effect that lets you synchro summon during your opponent's turn at quick effect speed, so long as you use Shooting Riser itself as a material. And this effect, as well as Shooting Riser's level modulation, make it an amazingly versatile tuner, as its level modulation makes it so the usual downside of high-level tuners being limited to summoning high-level synchro monsters doesn't apply, as you can turn your Shooting Riser into any level 1 through 7 to complete the level of your non-tuners to make it incredibly easy to go into your synchro boss monster of choice, which is mainly how Riser was used in Pendulum FTK strategies as a solid body that can modulate its level to make going into Tempest Magician a simple matter. But the real power of Shooting Riser Dragon is its ability to foolish cards with powerful graveyard effects. Now at first glance, it might seem that this effect is somewhat mediocre because of its harsh restriction that prevents you from using the effects of the monster you send until the end of the turn. And you'd be right in thinking that it prevents a lot of really interesting and powerful plays that could have been done with Riser. However, you can just send a monster with potential effects that can activate during your opponent's turn, and there are some great options. For example, during formats where Sword Soul and Adventure decks are popular, it was pretty common to see synchro strategies using Riser Dragon to send a copy of Token Collector to the graveyard, so the moment your opponent summoned a token on their turn, Token Collector could activate and lock them out of their main playmakers. Meanwhile, in formats where a deck like Flow into Rees is decently strong, you can instead use Riser to send a copy of Necroworld Banshee, so that during your opponent's turn, you can activate Zombie World from your deck to prevent your opponent from summoning the likes of M-Pen, since they'll be locked into only being able to tribute summon zombie monsters. But of course, the card that made shooting Riser more of a menace than anything else was Fairy Tale Snow, a monster that could flip an opponent's monster face down whenever it was summoned as a quick effect, that allows it to be brought out during either player's turn by banishing 7 cards from your graveyard, which is a crazy piece of interaction even just by itself, but was absurd when it was backed up with any kind of end board. Overall, Shooting Riser Dragon is an amazing card. Every one of its effects is strong in its own right, with its main benefit in foolishing a card that has a lot of strength when paired with the right options. And while it's certainly not the best extra deck Foolish barrel we've ever gotten, Shooting Riser is only going to get even stronger as more choices become available. And reducing its own level by 6 to be number 1 is Destrudo, the Lost Dragon's Frisson, the best high-level tuner in Yu-Gi-Oh's history. And that strength is concentrated in a relatively simple but extremely powerful effect. If you pay half your life points, you can target a level 6 or lower monster you control, and then you can special summon out Destrudo from your hand or graveyard, but then you have to reduce Destrudo's level by the level of monster initially targeted, and if Destrudo would leave the field, it goes to the bottom of the deck instead. So with any kind of normal summonable monster committed to the field, a Destrudo in hand or graveyard can act as an amazing way of getting free material on board to allow you to instantly access level 7 Synchro monsters, or a Link 2 monster with ease, and was specifically powerful when paired with the likes of Armageddon Knight or Dark Refer, both of which could send Destrudo from the deck to the graveyard while being a suitable level to summon it out. And even back when Destrudo was first released, it had a rich pool of powerful level 7 Synchros it could access, from the likes of Black Rose Dragon and Yazi for board breaking, and Ancient Fairy Dragon for board making, which already made it a great extender. But you were never limited in the type of monster that you could summon with Destrudo, as its role as a free link material grew increasingly more powerful as it received stronger and stronger leak options to use with it. Dragon Link, for example, was capable of using Destrudo as a free dragon extender to summon out the likes of Elpie, Pitsy, or any of the other links. And during the short periods of time where both Destrudo and Christian Hauki Fibrax were both legal at the same time, it being an easy bridge into Hulk was absurd. And it's likely that Destrudo was one of the many tuners that ended up being banned due to its potential synergy with the card. But perhaps the link that's most synonymous with Destrudo was Nightmare Mermaid, a Link 1 that would make with a Link 2 monster, which essentially allowed for any 2 monsters to be a full Orcus combo. And Destrudo just so happened to be a great way to get an extra body on board for virtually nothing. Now, in the modern era, a lot of these busted Link 2 payoffs have now found their way onto the ban list one way or another, and Destrudo has returned to be completely legal because while it's still a great extender, its potential payoff has definitely weakened somewhat. But that still hasn't stopped it from seeing play, as it's still a great tool for the likes of Sword Soul, which could use Destrudo to summon a Dark Charmer or Yazi, and of course within Tearlaments, which could easily mill a Destrudo and act as a free link fodder, but also to access Burrow to Floor by targeting a level 4 Tearlament to reduce Destrudo level 3 so that you can then synchro out with Tearlament's Kashtira as a level 7. So even in its currently weakered state, Destrudo proves it's worthy of the title of the game's strongest high-level tuner. It's adaptable to a ton of different potential applications, and while paying half your life points is certainly a somewhat notable cost, Destrudo has shown that it's more than worth bringing itself out to the field. And that's the list. If you think there's any other tuners we may have missed, or have any ideas for future videos just like this one, please let us know down in the comments below. And remember to like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.